Welcome to another Sprague Spotlight interview. I'm Jeff Fenner, and today joining me is Alfie Treleven, CEO and Board Chair, Sprague Pest Solutions. Welcome, Alfie.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Good to see you as always.
Great to see you, even in our Zoom format. It is great to see you. So
I can't wait till we can have dinner together. We've had so many fun dinners over the years. So someday soon.
You know, we could have both had some carry out and just eaten while we were talking. We could have done that.
And I promise no brown jokes anymore because they're actually decent again. Again, after 40 years.
Football is relevant for at least the next 12 months here, which is nice. We had a fun run this year. So I do look forward to when they play the NFC West again, and hopefully it'll be in Seattle, and I will make a trip out.
Fantastic. It'll be fun. And Jeff, I do want to say thank you for all you've done for our industry and for Sprague and for me personally over the years. It's been fantastic knowing you. So I'm super excited about this conversation. So let's go.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same way. It's a great relationship we've always had. So we're going to dive in. We're going to have a little fun today. Get you a little insights from where you sit and looking at your experiences and kind of you're very passionate about both not only your company but the things that you do outside. So I'm going to take you back in the time machine to, I believe it was January of 1981 when you walked in the door at Sprague, freshly minted from the University of Washington, as a full-time employee. I know you had been an employee for some years before that, but what'd you feel like when you walked in that door for the first time as a full-time employee?
As many people know who know me, I'm going to take your suggestion and ignore it. And I'm going to actually start in December of 1980.
Okay.
And that is a dinner we were having and got invited to. So it was my mom and my father, Larry and Jane, and myself. We were invited to this holiday dinner with a company called American Pest. We had just reached an agreement to purchase their Seattle office. And that is actually probably the primary reason I came to work for the business, because I wanted to open up an office in Seattle and absolutely not move back to Tacoma. So we're going to this dinner, and it's with some of the employees. We are met with the owner of the business at the front door and said, "Oh, by the way, I haven't told any of the employees yet." And my mother looked at, his name was Claude Weaver, looked at Claude and said, "Well, we're leaving."
we'll pass on the appetizers. We're going.
And Claude's like, no, it'll be great. And so the five of us walk into this dinner feeling very uncomfortable. That's where Jeff Miller was the branch manager for them. And so we got to meet Jeff at this dinner and their employees. And that's when people were like, why is Sprague here having dinner with us? So anyways, that's when Claude starts with a cocktail, and Claude always had plenty of cocktails. Started with, I'd like to introduce you to the Trelevens, blah, blah, blah. They now are your boss.
Pass the salad.
And there was a lot of people like, and there was, and so my father, who was a very jovial person, tried to make light of it and all the rest. Larry was trying to be serious about it, and then of course joined my father in being jovial. Anyways, so that sets the stage for your question. And your question is, what did you do on your when you walked in the door the first day? So I show up, and we're up in North Seattle, up on Aurora, up north, and uh, Jeff Miller's there, and some of the techs and all the rest, and there are two office staff, um, and I walk in, and Jeff is busy doing what he's doing, and I say, so hey, you want to grab coffee and like talk about this?
Figure the whole thing out.
and Jeff was like, well, yeah, like there's me. Do we really need both of us? and, and I said, well, yes. Once you get to know me, you'll know that we need at least both of us, because you'll have to pick up for me, and I'll try not to get in your way. And here, Jeff is still with us, still leading the way, as he's preparing to step back into a different mentoring role for us. But I guess the first day was not without, it's just one of those things. I just spent time talking to people, and they all had opinions on who was good and who was bad, who should be sticking around, who should, all the rest. And yes, and, it was really funny to get all the different thoughts. Probably the more important day was day 2, because day 1 I was still trying to figure out, like who's who and who's really the influencers, or who's, and clearly everyone there looked up to Jeff a lot, and so day 2, it was more like, okay, how are we going to make money? And so I met with Jeff, and I said, okay, what do we have planned for the month? What are and he kind of showed me, and I said, yeah, no. What do we have? Not for the week. What do we have planned for the month? He goes, no, this is it, dude.
We got 1 week.
And I was like, oh man. So after a quick phone call to Larry and say, what the hell? And Larry's great guidance. Well, you'll figure it out. So Miller and I just got busy, and we tried to sell what we could, and we got people lined up and did a ton of training. And one of the funny things too is figuring out a vehicle for me. I got a lot of guidance from my father and brother, and they said, well, I don't know, there's some vehicles sitting up there, we paid for them, figure one out. And the only one that was actually operating, that were sitting in the yard, was this old Ford Econoline van. The floor was partially rusted out, so I took cardboard and duct tape and taped it so I wouldn't get splashed driving around in the winter in Seattle. And so anybody at Sprague that ever complains about a vehicle, I guarantee you, we're not making you take cardboard and duct tape it to the floor to keep the spray off of you. And it had been rusted out because they had these giant 100-gallon, no, it's 200-gallon sprayers in the back that were leaking, and so it had rusted out the floor. So I had to not only do that with the cardboard, but I also had to clean this thing in order to make it like legitimately safe as well as legal. And so day 1 and day 2 were rather interesting. They certainly set the tone that I was not coming in with a silver spoon in my mouth, because all the techs knew which vehicle I was driving, and they were like, oh man, I can't believe the owner's gonna have to drive that thing. So anyways.
So obviously it set the tone, and things obviously got better from there. So how long were you in? How long did you run that outpost. That was the first outpost outside of Tacoma, correct?
Yeah, we had a small thing like in Bremerton where we had Tim Gallagher was stationed up there, and we had a couple of techs down in Olympia and stuff. But yeah, that was Seattle was the first of size location, and so that was January of '81. In the fall of '85, I started commuting to Tacoma. Pretty much full time. And yeah, so about 4 years or so, 4.5 years.
So I mean, you mentioned in that story, obviously, the dinner surprise. Your parents were there. Larry was there. Family, as long as I've known you, has been a huge influence on you both professionally and personally. What lessons did you take away, from your parents? Did you know your grandfather? Did you get much interaction with him? What kind of interaction and words of wisdom did they pass on to you?
Yeah, so two things. My grandfather Treleven, my dad's father, he passed away when I was 5 years old at the dinner table with us. I was sitting next to him, so that was quite the experience. The He was probably the gruffest, kindest person you've ever met, and I know that Larry had a lot of influence from that, as well as my father. Also, and more significantly, was our maternal grandfather, my mom's dad. We had a lot of interaction with him, and he was a very hard worker and very you never know it. Drove always like an old beater pickup or a old car or something, but was able to be very financially successful in his lifetime, coming from quite literally nothing, to be much better off. And
So,
so,
so, so
so
beater,
that
so
I think,
beater cars are something that's much a family tradition. Econoline vans with no floorboards and other bad cars. Okay, I see a theme.
yeah, he would have looked at that van and said, "Wow, that's a perfectly operable van. What are you worried about?"
It's a good car for you.
The yeah, and so I think so. Two things on that, as far as your question, as far as generationally from our grandparents, Larry and I were both influenced first. Most significantly probably by our maternal grandfather. And then secondly, influence from our mom and dad. They were two very much family first parents who provided much but expected a lot. And they, they very faith bound, very committed to the community, committed to 11 children, plus all of our friends. It's crazy to think that, a family with 11 children, and most of our friends wanted to come and hang out at our house. And so it was nothing to see like 20 kids at our house. That was just normal. Um, and my mom always, was baking bread, making soup. In fact, one of our vision statements for our Cambium holding company is make the soup, share the soup. That's our vision statement, and that really comes generationally from our mother, who actually, for many years, for our training meetings, would make these giant pots of soup, as well as for our board meetings, which we usually did lunch board meetings. She would host them at their house, and she'd always have some sort of soup just as a starter, and so that So back to the influence. My father, Larry's and my father was such a hard worker. He was absolutely a person of action, and he really didn't tell you, the right thing to do or the right thing to think about or anything like that. He just did them. And if you were smart, you kept up with them. If you were physically fit, you kept up with them. You can ask you can ask Jeff Miller and a few others that knew our father that in his mid 60s, most technicians could not keep up with him.
An action
The
man. An action man.
he would be one of those people that would go and work 10 hours, come home, grab some of us. We'd go and do like St. Vincent de Paul food deliveries to families in need. We'd come home, go swim, have dinner, probably do a project or two, and then just keep going. One of the cool things that I think, especially the story for our fourth and fifth generation, we love to talk about is back in the '60s. So Larry and I were fortunate enough; we grew up with a swimming pool, and my father had a couple of engineer buddies that worked in the local breweries. And they got talking about the cost of electricity had been continuing to escalate, and they came up with this design with these round tubes and these giant 8x8 uh, flat boxes painted black, that you'd run the water through our filter system up on the roof through these various boxes of coils and back into the pool. And they were grabbing the heat from the sun. And so this is back in like early 60s. This is back before anybody was really talking solar.
Right.
And I highlight that, and I'm sure that Larry will talk about some other stories about using two-way radios in our vehicles and stuff like that. But I highlight that because my dad was such a person of action. So many of us talk about solar, many of us talk about electric cars and all that. My dad, when somebody mentioned it, he just said, "Okay, well, let's do it." And that really, in a nutshell, was what Larry and I grew up with, because there was no reason to talk about something for the intellectual exercise. My dad did it with the idea of, okay, let's go make something better.
Okay.
So he did that. When he came back from World War II, he was a pilot, and with the Coast Guard, and so they used two-way radios all the time. And so when he started outfitting his service vehicles, he's like, well, I need to talk to these people. And so he put radios in the vehicles. And again, this is in the 50s.
Futuristic stuff for the time.
Yeah. And so it's just super cool that Larry and I had, when you asked me about an hour ago, for influence from our parents and grandparents. We were so damn lucky that we had two, like I said, very much family first, community first parents that knew that collaboration and new ideas were out there to be implemented, not to be discussed. So,
and that's something that Sprague has been known for, is that innovation. Not afraid to try something, take a chance. I mean, smartly, doing it, but not afraid to take that chance. And it sounds like your dad's personality, just, was just that. I mean, if you had to look at between you and Larry, who mirrors your dad more? Who mirrors your mom more?
Wow. I probably got the worst characteristics of both of them, and Larry got the best of both of them. Maybe, I don't know. Um, that's hard because there's no way to it's like the soup, you put all the ingredients in, and the salt is the part of the ingredients,
Right.
it's not separate once you put it together. And I think Larry and I are very much made up of who they were and what they were.
Right.
And so there's no separating that.
You
So
both got the best. It sounds like you did. So,
yeah, we were both very lucky. There were times when I think my mother and father had to be a little sterner with me to try to keep me um, along in line,
Laura,
or at least not off the rails too badly.
well, that'll be for
One
that'll
other
be for
thing, can I say one other thing about this too? Is
sure.
an example of my father, and I have give a lot of credit to Larry too. Is when people like Norm Amon, who most don't know him now, but a legend in our industry. Um, when Norm Amon would come into town back in the olden days with Van Waters and Rogers, and well, actually way back in Neil McLean days and stuff, he would actually come over either for dinner or whatever with our family, us and 20 others, and and he always offered whenever he came in to do training. And my dad, who again come from his Coast Guard training days, always knew that you had to improve your skills. And that was something that, kudos to Larry and my dad both, that whenever suppliers were coming through, they had them put on training courses for our technicians. And many times our competitors are like, oh man, you're wasting so much time, just have the owners learn it and they can train it. And like, no, we want our people to hear it from the researchers. We want them have them hear it from the manufacturers. We want them to hear it from the people that are using it. And so they early on, I mean, when there was 5 technicians, they had some of the top trainers in our industry doing training for us. And I have a lot of kudos to my father and to Larry. So
You mentioned the fourth generation. With AJ and Ross and Paul. You look at statistics that come out about family businesses. They say the average shelf life is about 24 years. Obviously, you're into your 90s. And getting to that fourth generation, 3% make it to the fourth generation. You've defied the averages. What's the secret sauce that's got you to the fourth generation and hopefully to the fifth?
So many things. First off, the good news about being from a big family is we had lots of friends, and instantly made friends. Just because there was a big family, you always had somebody to do something with, and so we learned a lot about teamwork and sustainability and just working together. And whenever there was a project to be done, my dad or my mom would rally 4, 5, 6 of us to go do it, and we could get things done quickly and then go have a good time. And I think as we grew up in that kind of environment, and we had this fantastic business with reoccurring revenues and really cool people that we worked with. We, I don't know. You just kind of got so engrossed with it, and so engrossed with being helping others. And so I'm going to go back to answer your question now, having that kind of the preamble. I'll reference it with an old Chinese proverb that unfortunately my children have had to listen to. And that is, when's the best time to plant a tree? And the answer to that, according to this proverb, is 20 years ago. And the next best time to plant a tree is today. And so using that, Larry and I talked a lot about, gosh, everybody was selling businesses to Waste Management back in the day. Everybody was, transitioning. And then, of course, we thought that was going to be over with. And then here it's, 30 plus years later, and family businesses are still selling rapidly. We 20 plus years ago, when actually more than that, time does fly, about 25 years ago, we started sharing our vision for the business and sharing our vision for investing together as a family and sharing together responsibility and stewardship and just what it means to be part of a family business versus what it means to be just part of a regular company, and both are cool. We just think that the family business concept, if generations are interested in nurturing it and being good stewards, if they're interested in that, we felt like people needed to know the inner workings of the business. So we started sharing when the kids were in middle school, grade school, started sharing financials, started sharing, talking about buildings we were buying or building, talking about vehicle leasing programs, talk about what's going on with the industry, talk about what other family businesses are doing. We were fortunate that we had friends that were in like 6 and 7 and 8 generation businesses that made ours look like just an upstart. So we really invested a ton of time in that, and we brought in speakers, we brought in family practice experts to help us work through creating codes of conduct, creating family offices, creating work agreements and investment agreements and things like that. Like I said, over the last 25 plus years. And so we did that with the idea that we really felt that Sprague was special, and what we do and the service we provide in society is critical. And why would we want to go and sell that and then just invest in stocks or something when we could actually do something special for the world? And I know you've heard me say this probably way too often or too many times, but that's really where that Sprague passionately delivers uncompromising service came out of, was getting in touch with those emotions, not only for the family and what we could do generationally, but also for our longtime coworkers that had been with us for 40, 30, 20 plus years. And we talk about what drives them, what drove them, the heart messages, what's in their head, and what they can accomplish as a profession, as a professional. And so, yeah, we really worked hard at that with the family and creating that whole concept of, well, let's just do this generationally. And Larry and I actually had shared a number of years ago when the kids were starting to get married and things like that, talked to them about, some of our targets were really their generation 4, but we actually are targeting generation 5. So that's our grandchildren. And we really believe that if the family stays committed to our mission for Sprague and for some of the other investments that we have, we can do this for a long time, and we can make a great place for people to work. They can have awesome stability. They have resources to go out and push their outer limits on their skills, and we can invest in people, and so that's what really drove it. And getting to the core of that is the whole idea of the world deserves safe food and to work and live in healthy environments. And for me, what got me up every morning, what kept me out in, when I was running the Pike Place market routes, and, as those restaurants were closing, and, I might have started at 5 that morning, but I was still out at 10 o'clock at night as the restaurants were shutting down, and what drove me was just knowing that we were making such a difference in these people's lives. Many of them had no flipping clue. They're like, just get rid of the rats and the roaches. And I'm like, yes. And then you need to clean these surfaces to make it so that you can prepare food and deliver and serve food in a safe manner. And that was back in the early 80s. That was received better by some. But with the products and the techniques and stuff that we have today are so different than what they were. I mean, to go into a restaurant and see thousands of roaches was not unusual in the 80s, and certainly the 70s and the 80s. To go into some of the sub areas of Seattle and come out with 5-gallon buckets of dead rats was not unusual. So anyways, I just the whole be passion. It was we had this for the family, and we just, if you want to take it, I always felt, and I know Larry felt this as well, is that our time sitting in the seat as president, my time today sitting in the seat as CEO and chairman, now Ross as president, is just that. It's a period in time, because I'm supposed to keep that seat improved and ready for the next generation to take on the leadership. And thank goodness 20 plus years ago, we had these conversations, because Generation 4, A, is smarter than Larry and I, and B, better prepared than we were, and C, have as much drive, I believe, as Larry and I ever had. And super excited about that. And that goes for certainly Ross, AJ, Paul, but also Angela, who sits on our board of directors.
You mentioned the various phases in the industry where you had the waste management. We're currently, I'd say, for the last 5-6 years in a very large run up of acquisition and merger. It almost seems like the family business, which this industry has been built on, is sort of disappearing the way of maybe the dinosaur. I mean, do you see it getting a revival at some point? Family businesses in this industry?
Yeah, very good question. And so I think using data is probably is a good helper. When I look at what happened in the waste management days in the 80s, they came in and wiped out, shouldn't say it that way. They went and acquired a whole bunch of family businesses. And what happened there was a number of talented people that worked in those businesses said, I didn't sign up for this number game, every quarter, either hit my number or I'm a goat. So they all left and started up businesses. And there's, from the late 90s, early 2000s, when another phase of acquisitions and mergers started happening, again, those companies got acquired, but also there's other companies that came in after them. I believe that there's a lot of room for all of us. When you look at the PPMA, which is doing a fantastic job trying to increase the size of our industry, when you look at the small percentage of our potential market that our businesses are serving, man, we've got just a ton of upside.
Okay.
Um, we do this right, and there's going to be more family businesses getting of size. I mean, I see it today that the number of, on the West Coast or the Western U.S., the number of companies that started out in the last 15, 20 years that are at 6, 8, there's other companies that are in the 20s to 100 million that started up in the last 5, 10 years. And I, there's always going to be a place in our industry. I think the key for us is to keep investing in our industry and our people. And the industry will get bigger, and all of us will continue to earn the right to be more successful. And so if we work hard, prepare ourselves and all the rest, there'll be plenty of spots for us.
How was the decision made to just focus in on the commercial market? I mean, you had, over the years, some small pockets of residential. How did you sort of pivot to come back and say, we're going to put all of our energies into commercial?
Probably the easiest way for me to summarize that is the world deserves safe food and to work and live in healthy environments. That was our mantra. That is who we are. And so when we decided that and that we were just going to do that, we said, okay, where are we going to be really good, world class at doing just that? And one of our challenges at the time was, well, it's always, shouldn't even say it at the time. One of our challenges is resources.
Right.
And that's always a challenge for any company. You can ask Terminix, Orca, and everybody, they'll say resources. And so for us, we felt that trying to pursue that charge was going to be way too diluted if we tried to take that approach also at the same time in the residential market. And so we said, okay, well, let's look at all of that. Let's go ahead and create a business plan around what an all commercial company would be, or what allocating resources towards commercial and residential would be. And when we started, especially then, because we were, everybody was doing their websites and everybody was doing, for us, we were doing our online logbooks. We were doing all these different investments that we were having to do. And we just felt like it was going to be super resource intensive for us to build the story around the residential at the time that would differentiate us enough to get enough people to buy those services at the level that we wanted to deliver them. That we just felt that the commercial is something that we loved. It was at that time still, it was, about 85% of our business. We just said, why not invest heavily in the biggest part of our business, the part of our business we felt most comfortable differentiating ourselves. And so I know this is probably a longer answer than what you were looking for, but that is a lot of the background behind the thought process to go commercial, or fully all in on commercial.
I mean, you've held various roles in the company. Starting with your rusted out Econoline van, and uh, what have you? What's your approach? I mean, obviously, you had your influences, both family, your dad, your brother. You had influences from coworkers. How did you sort of find your own style, if you would, that you've sort of kind of continued throughout your career? Where'd that come from? How would you define your style?
What a fantastic question. Um, I um, I get so excited to see people exceed what they thought they could. Um, I guess the consummate, um, I don't know, player coach when I first got started, matured a little bit better and gave people more freedom so they could be more successful, and the company then could be more successful, and our clients could be more successful. And so, gal, who I am is I found that and don't ask Miller, but if you did ask him, he'd probably tell you I was one of the worst technicians he's ever had. um, because instead of just like going and servicing a particular account, I would go in there, get started, and going, well, you guys should try this, and then let's get your neighbors, and we can get these in, and what should have taken like 30 minutes was 2 hours later, and I was still talking to the people next door and all the rest. Um, so for me, I was not the pitcher. I was the pitching coach.
Okay.
Um, because I, uh, I just wanted us to do so many things, and fortunately for me, I had awesome friends in college that were highly and have been incredibly highly successful. So I would watch what they were doing. I would see how they built companies, how they built big investments, how they collaborated with others to invest with them, and all the rest, and how important it was for them and their businesses to go out and get highly talented, or I should say, excuse me, highly driven, talented people that wanted to get stuff done, kind of like my dad, who it was great to have a good idea, but if he couldn't take that idea and make something of it, then it was just cat.
Right.
and and so I guess my style is that um, I always wanted to look for new ideas because I felt like I was always curious about stuff. Well, I'm still very curious about stuff, and uh, that's just you know that's what drives me.
You mentioned the search for talent, driven folks, talented individuals, and you've had a chance through the years to interact with so many technicians, route managers, young sales representatives. What do you tell them when you get a chance? If you could sit there and give them advice as to how to further their careers, and I know it's very important to Sprague to have them also be further their personal lives and help the communities that they live in. What advice do you would you give to them, about how to further on both tracks?
Yeah, for me, I try not to be overly arrogant and give advice, because knowing my personality, if somebody tried to give me actually advice, I'd probably tell them to bugger off or something. Anyways, for me, I just say, for me, it's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? How do you want your communities? How do you want your customers to look at you? How do you want your families to be supported? What can we do together to make something special? how do we help your clients understand that if we do our jobs right, the food that they're shipping all over this world, or the food they're providing for our local communities, is going to be better than it would be without us. For me, it'd be, if you're servicing acute care hospitals, what can we do to help them, and so they can do their job better. And so for me, it's just, what do you want to do? What can we help you be better at? I promise you, we'll give you the training you want. We'll pay for education. We do that. We will provide you support. We'll provide you time to go get better at what you do. And so for me, the advice is, what do you want to do? What do you want to be really good at? What do you want to be world class at?
You've been able, and say you said you're fortunate that you've grown up, you went to college and been around folks that have built successful companies. You've been around those folks in the industry for a number of years. What's your definition of successful leadership?
It's to me, it's really, it's simple yet difficult to sustain, and that is, how can we lift, be levers for people? If you like, you see these charismatic speakers, or charismatic lead, I don't call them leaders, just charismatic people. And there's, you dump a lot of sugar in, and then the high is gone quickly. For me, it's really creating paths for people to lift themselves, and just, I don't know, it's just being around people that want to do something, that want to accomplish something. It's successful leaders, successful people want to be around people that are exciting, and I don't mean rah exciting, because
Right.
I don't think that's my style. And I don't think, anyways, that's just probably not my style. But for me, it's finding talent, letting them go play ball. I'll bring the bat and ball, let them go play. So.
We'll switch gears a little bit. You're an avowed gold and purple fan, I believe.
Go Dogs!
Go Dogs! It sounds like you very much enjoyed your time at the University of Washington. What took you to UW? In the first place, and what was so unique about that place that's obviously influenced you many years later?
The University of Washington, for a large university, I never felt like I was overwhelmed with this massive university. I always found these little nooks and crannies or cracks to go in and find something cool to do. And I found some really fun jobs just through people I met, and I worked down at Spice, down at the spice shop down at Pike Place Market for a year and a half, almost two. And I learned all about, and again, this is the early 70s, learned all about these, or mid 70s, I guess, learned all about these cool coffees and teas and spices from all over the world that, and when I was there, some of the most innovative restaurateurs on the West Coast when they were in Seattle, would stop in and see Ruth. She was the owner. and we had this market spice tea, which is still famous today. And so I learned how to make it, and just so got exposed to that. But I got that because of somebody I met at the University of Washington. And then also I sold advertisements for the daily newspaper.
Really?
And so I got to meet all sorts of cool people. So I would go sometimes with the friends who were reporters doing stories on people. And back then, we were doing the new Jimi Hendrix Memorial in Seattle. And we were doing a bunch of these features, and so I got to go and sit in on some of the interviews of the family, and as well as then talk with like a bunch of the radio stations and all the rest, trying to sell them advertisements in the daily. So again, back to at the UW, it was, like I'd run into somebody and just start talking about, hey, what do you do? And they go, hey, you want to try this? And I was like, well, yeah, that sounds like kind of fun. Let's go. And and again, like I said, a number of my friends have been involved with some of the major companies that got going in the Seattle market, and just having time with them, and yes, my time outside of the classroom was very exciting. I would say
in the classroom,
I got A+ on the extracurricular.
Your independent study classes were always well done. Did you? Was there ever a thought about not going into the family business?
Yeah, in fact, I had a really cool experience. Again, somebody I met at the university. Back then, they used to have the Variety Club used to do these big phonathons is what they're called, and then we had like dance offs, like 24-hour dance marathons and stuff like that. And so a friend said, hey, these people need somebody to help with some of the marketing and with some of the volunteer work that's going on around this. And again, I should have said no, but I said yes. And so we started to do a bunch of work at these. And then at the time, Seattle used to have an NBA basketball team. And the owner of the team at that time was very active in the Variety Club. And so he always got a bunch of the Sonic players to come by for this phonathon, and the dance marathon down at the Seattle Center. They'd get some players to swing by, and then also the Seahawks would do something similar. And actually, the year that I was in charge of the dance marathon, Steve Rabel, who now is the play-by-play for the Seahawks, and was a wide receiver for the Seahawks at the time. He had an eye to, he knew his career was going to be short in the NFL. And so he had an eye to going into broadcasting. And so I had a chance to work with him for about almost 10 days leading up to and during the marathon. So at that point in time, that was actually right before I came to work for the company. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I got offered a assistant director of marketing for the Sonics. And really what that meant was whatever the marketing director needed, you were the grunt that went and did it. So I had no illusions that it was going to be like this super launch position. Right. It was basically something barely above a paid internship.
Hmm.
And luckily, at the time, that's when Dad and Larry were looking at doing this acquisition, um, and so I ended up going to the company, and it was a good thing because about 6 months later, the owner of the Sonics at the time sold them to the Ackerleys, and the Ackerleys fired everybody in the office.
Your tenure would have been brief.
So that really poor paying job would have lasted about 5 or 6 months. Um,
But you would have had fun. You probably would have had a lot of fun.
yeah, probably. But anyways, so that's fortunately for me. Both my dad and Larry, my brother, were just gave Jeff Miller and I a blank slate and said, "Hey, go play, go figure it out." And there was some good and some bad with that. But what is it? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Stronger. Yes.
Miller and I live that almost every day.
So obviously,
So
you've got that. You said you're curious. Uh, you enjoy life clearly. What does Alfie do outside of Sprague? I mean, what's a good day when you are not thinking pests?
something with family and friends. Hopefully that means like skiing in the morning and golfing in the afternoon, or on the boat doing some sort of water sports. Whatever it is, it's outside.
Is fine with you.
Yeah, even if we end the day with watching a movie out on the outside deck or something. If it's outside, I'm good.
You're good. You're happy. Excellent. Well, Alfie, thank you for taking time today to chat. It's been fun, very enjoyable, and we look forward to having further conversations when we can be in the non-Zoom world.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to having a nice dinner with you. Thanks.
Same here. Take care, Alfie.
Alrighty, bye-bye.